friends, I'm Sarah. This is a place where I hope that we can encourage and create together. Let's get to it. So for watercolor, we're going to first gather our supplies. I usually have a cup of water. I have two just in case I need a clean one. I have tube watercolor paints, so you can use tube or you can just use the kind that come in a palette that most people have access to. It doesn't matter because basically you're going to put it in a palette and they're going to dry up and all you do is add water to it. It's the same concept. I always have paper towels and watercolor paper. This is important because any other kind of paper will just get too wet and break through. So you want watercolor paper. This is a good brand you can get online. It's a pretty good brand, Kilimanjaro. And this is a block, so that means once I'm done, I can like take it off. It's like, can you see? There's like a little piece here. Sorry, my fingernails are kind of gross. And then, so that way I don't have to tape it down. I really like blocks for that reason. I've started this. This is a tree. I just did off of my imagination because I really love trees. And thought that'd be a good first place to start. So some rules about drawing trees, which we can talk about drawing another time, but every part of a tree gets thinner unless there's like a little knob like where a bud would be or whatever. But in general, like the thickest part is going to be at the bottom and then it gets thinner, and each branch does the same thing. And the branches that are at the bottom kind of go downward, and the branches that are up are like, because they're newer, they'll be going more up. So just like a basic thing, if you're going to come up with one in your head, it would be weird if a tree branch going from the top were like way thicker and like going down. It would be sticking up straight because it would be the lead of the tree. Anyways, the best way to draw a tree is to go look at a tree and draw it and practice. That's how you get good. Okay, so you have your watercolor, and I have done one layer. So one of the things, I have two rules, and I think my college professor, one of them, I think she was my painting professor. Anyways, it doesn't matter. There's two rules. Keep it fresh and don't overwork it. Okay? Keep it fresh. That means like keep the color fresh and let it dry and work in layers. So this is one layer, it's completely dry, and now I'll add my second layer on top of it, and third layer and fourth layer and that kind of thing. So as it dries, I'll be working on the trunk, and then once that's dry, I'll work on the tree leaves, because otherwise they'll bleed into each other, and that's why we call like keep it fresh. Let it dry each layer. Don't overwork it. Don't try to like add things while it's wet. Like let it dry and keep going. So those are my two tips. Watercolor is really fun because you can travel. Somebody gave me this, and you know, you can like take it with you, and you can, you know, sketch different little things with watercolor. This is me planting a garden. This was when my family was in Costa Rica, which was super fun. So yeah, you can, watercolor is just the easiest for travel, so that's why I'm starting with watercolor. I travel a lot. Well, not now because we're stuck in one place, but we can imagine we're traveling a lot, can't we? So I'm gonna get this situated so you can see, and then we'll get started. So all my art colors mostly are out. I'll probably have to replenish all my greens, so I'll do that. But basically, you want to have a good selection of brushes. You'll kind of find that you gravitate towards certain brushes. You can hear the sirens in the background, but that's just life. We are living outside right now. So these are great little brushes. Someone gave me these red ones for my graduation. They're super nice, but honestly, if they're soft and they say watercolor brushes and the little pieces don't come out, they're probably gonna work. But it's nice to have different sizes for different textures. So I always say you wet your brush before you start because it protects the brush, unless you're specifically going for a dry brush look. I really like to add purple to my tree trunks because trees are not really that brown. They're kind of more gray. So I like to add a little bit of brown. I'll add a little red too, why not? And just go for it. So one of my favorite things about sharing art with people is sharing why I love art. When I was a kid, my mind was going a lot faster than I probably wanted it to go. And to settle down and do art was like the one thing that made me focus. And so that's why I really enjoy art. I think it's the one place where I really find myself in a moment. And it's kind of healing. It is healing. And moments of deep emotion, maybe small trauma, things like that in my life that I've seen, there have been always outlets for me to do art and process my feelings. And I found when I do art with people, you kind of start talking more, and even seeing that people will talk more too. So you might see that I'm just having fun, because that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to have fun and create. Add a little purple. I'll probably do a little color theory one, but I just felt like this would be a good first. So I'm really fascinated by the idea of creative rest. One time my dad and I were getting tacos al pastor, which are our favorite tacos. And a friend joined us, and she was asking me questions, and I asked her a question, and my dad thought I was just trying to like fill up the time. But I like genuinely wanted to know, because I love hearing how people find creative rest. So that's like my question that I've been asking. How do you find creative rest? I'd love to hear in the comments if you're listening to this. Creative rest implies there's a creation of some kind. So that could be cooking, it could be baking, it could be writing, it could be singing a song, it could be journaling, it can be painting, anything that has some kind of creation aspect to it. Because we're made in the image of our Creator, that's a part of who we are. We're made to create. And I think that unless you're in a creative field, it can be hard for people to say they're creative. And it can be hard for people who are in a creative field too sometimes, to even say that they're an artist. I mean, I've felt that way. So anyways, I'm just blabbing. So I'm working on kind of making bark definition. You can use a thinner brush, but I've gotten used to using a bigger brush. You'll hear Bowie sigh. He groans sometimes. Also hear my wind chimes. I don't even know. I think maybe I did get this picture from somewhere. I started this last year, so I think I started this in October. Thought it was my imagination, but I don't know if my imagination was this creative.
Most people think an artist is some big shot, romantic hero type. That's totally true, but maybe I should clarify. All I mean is if you're human, and if you're breathing, then you're made in the image of God. And we are all making, because the Maker made us first. Now I read a couple books by Professor Tolkien, but Samwise said it best. We're living a story with an end too good to be guessed. But usually what that looks like is something simple, like making up my bed, or saying I'm sorry, or having coffee with a friend. 'Cause every choice you're making, it is creating some kindly artifact that opens a doorway for a pilgrim to find rest. So maybe you're a plumber, or you're a drummer, or a mama of 20 kids. You live in a wheelchair. There's not a soul without something to give.
Okay, so we have this tree so far. I'm gonna let it dry a little bit because it's starting to be overworked and we don't want to do that. So I'm gonna take a little chili break and eat some chili, even though it's like really hot today on the first day of spring. Okay, so I'm back. You can see the more texture, the more dynamic it looks, and the first layer is still really flat, right? So you can kind of tell if you just work in layers, it starts building up, kind of like a sculpture, if you think of it that way.
'Cause even Jesus had a day job till he was 30, maybe lived at home with his mom. Just ask any artist, the ordinary's 9/10 of the job. But I know just what it feels like. We all get strung out like a strand is pulled from a cloth, a strand that gets stranded and wonders whether it can play any part.
Okay, you're gonna hear some construction in the background, some hammering, but it's his life. This is my final tree. I'm gonna leave it a little more unfinished because I'm gonna go in with a black pen, with the archival pen, and do some fun pen work. So, yay! Can't you see how fun the texture with the layers is when you keep it fresh? Hey friends, I have some encouragement for you. I have a friend I would like to introduce you to. Her name is Katherine, and I asked her 2 questions. 1, how do you find creative rest? And 2, how are you finding contentment right now? So, let's see.
What do I do for creative rest? That's a good question. I actually, in thinking about that question, realized I'm sorely lacking in creative rest at the moment. But the things that are creative that give my soul rest are writing and music. I play the piano. I like to sing. I like to listen to worship music. And while I've been getting a lot of physical rest in this season, I haven't been pursuing my creative passions as much. And actually, Sarah's question to me has caused me to think about that and to realize I need to get back at it. And maybe I won't be in such a slump right now if I could just get some creative rest back. So look for me. I will be either writing on my blog or maybe playing some music that you will never hear. So contentment, that's a tricky topic right now. If you're not watching this live or shortly after it releases, you may not know that right now we're going through the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And pretty much everything that we wanted to do has been canceled. We're told to stay at home, don't get together, 6 feet apart. If you do happen to see anybody, and that's ruined a lot of people's plans, maybe even something you've looked forward to for your whole life, like graduation or a big trip, or maybe even your wedding is going to have to look different from what you had dreamed of. And that's really hard. I get it. Contentment doesn't come easily in situations like that. And I don't have any plans like that right now that are being canceled for me, but I did go through something like that earlier in my life, and I feel like it's prepared me for this time. All I had ever wanted to do when I was growing up was to grow up, get married, have kids, and be a stay-at-home mom. But about 5 years into my marriage, my husband decided that he didn't want to have kids anymore, and he didn't want to talk about it or tell me why. And I basically saw everything I had always wanted just crumbling to bits. And that was so hard and scary for me to imagine a future that wasn't what I had already planned out. That basically I went into denial and developed an anxiety disorder to cope with it. But after several years of God teaching me and speaking to me and molding my heart, I came to realize that I had been holding on to my plans instead of having open hands to receive what God had for me. He was literally having to pry my fingers loose in order to get my plans out so he could replace them with his plans. And that was a really painful experience, and I don't recommend going through it. So how does that relate to you? I think it's important to know that God can give us contentment in all circumstances, that his plans are better than ours. Paul talks about that in the book of Philippians. There is a verse that's quoted all the time, and it's really taken out of context, but the verse is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But actually, what he's referring to is all these situations where he was suffering. And in times of plenty and in times of nothing, in times I think of quarantine, or times when he had favor, like when he was a Pharisee even, he was very well esteemed, and was leading this crusade against the Christians. But in all of our highs and in all of our lows, God teaches us that we can be content. And I think especially in this time, we can think about contentment when nothing is going our way, because Christ can give us that contentment. And his way is always the best way, no matter what. And I just recommend that you don't hold on to your plans so tightly that God has to pry your fingers open, because that hurts. Just hold your hands open for whatever he has and allow him to place his good plans into your hands. The verse that Paul says in his letter to the Philippians says, in any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or need. I am able to do all things through Christ who gives me strength.
Oh, but God, the great composer, is weaving every little thread toward a tapestry. And you are a masterpiece, he's making part of his symphony. So go and plant tomatoes, rock a screaming baby, go and make your bathroom clean. 'Cause everything matters if we're to make the Maker see.
Bowie